is Valentine's Day, and what better way to celebrate than with some freshly shucked oysters? I took a trip down to Gulf Shrimp in Plantsville, Connecticut, and picked up some of the freshest oysters around. Gulf Shrimp provides fantastic, top-notch, high-quality seafood for the Connecticut and surrounding areas. Oysters are the perfect food to celebrate Valentine's Day, as they are, of course, an aphrodisiac. And we also have a beautiful bottle of cremant d'Alsace to pair with our oysters. I'll show you the best way to shuck the oysters, how to pair them, and how best to enjoy them, especially when they're this fresh. But first, I think a little festive attire is in order. Now, let's cook. Alright, let's dive right into a discussion of our distinct varieties of oysters today. First up, we have our East Beach Blonde oysters hailing from Rhode Island. They have a beautiful ocean brininess, a nice mineral finish, and delicate, tender meat. And our featured Connecticut oyster, we have Blue Point. They have a firmer texture, mild, delicate flavor, and a sweet finish. And last but certainly not least, our Ninegret nectars. They come from Rhode Island. They have a subtle brininess and a creamy finish. A super important part of the process is cleaning our oysters thoroughly because nobody wants a mouthful of sand. We simply take a clean, fresh, brand new green scrubbing pad, and under cold running water, we go ahead and begin using the abrasive pad against the top part of the oyster shell, going into every crevice, removing any possibility of sand. Once the top side is completely cleaned and feels smooth, we can flip our oyster over and go after the bottom part of the shell. There's usually a few more grooves and nooks and crannies to get into, so go ahead and use that abrasive pad to your advantage. And that's it. Once it's nice and smooth all around and devoid of any possible sand or dirt particles, you are good to go. Just organize them as far as which variety you've cleaned so that when you open them later on, you know which one you're tasting. I've found that a shallow bowl works best for placing your oysters atop a beautiful bed of ice. And here's a little trick to make some crushed ice of your very own. You just need a sealable plastic bag, some ice, and a good old fashioned meat tenderizer. Give it a good whack and repeat. Go ahead and smooth the ice into the bowl, creating a nice, flat, even platform to elevate the oysters for aesthetic purpose as well as to keep them cool. And now it's time to open our oysters.
The tool we'll be using is an oyster knife. It is very important to have a proper oyster knife to open your oysters for safety and ease of use. Some things you want to look for in a good oyster knife is a strong, durable handle to give you leverage and keep your hands safe. Also, there is a nice guard to protect your hand, and the tip, which will help wedge in the crevice of the oyster, popping it out smoothly without slipping. Now we're ready to begin opening our oysters. And let's take a close look, and you can see the point of entry for our oysters where the two shells come together. And let's zoom in real close, and we can see exactly where we're going to place the tip of our oyster knife and wiggle it right in to allow us access to pop the hinge and open up the oyster and eventually scrape against the top part of the oyster shell in order to free the meat from the shell and reveal our beautiful uncut plump oyster meat. We're using a kitchen towel to protect our hands, safety first, but also to give us leverage in which to open our oyster. So we're going to go ahead and use the tip of the oyster knife and very simply wiggle until we feel that we've reached a firm hold inside the oyster, and then we just simply twist the wrist, which will help to pop the hinge of the oyster, allowing us to wiggle further in and then scrape along the top of the oyster shell to free that meat right up. When scraping the top of the shell, make sure your oyster knife is angled upwards so you do not poke the beautiful, delicate flesh of that oyster. And once we have it open, you can see the beautiful, shimmering, moist, succulent, plump flesh of that oyster. Keep the oyster level so you don't spill out those beautiful juices. And in just a bit, you'll see how we go underneath the oyster to disconnect the oyster from the bottom half of the shell. It's also important to give each oyster a nice smell, just in case any oysters that aren't fresh enough for consumption snuck their way into the batch. And after shucking, place it right onto the ice to keep it cool and fresh. Next up, we're going to create picturesque lemon wedges to squeeze over the top of our fresh oysters. Start the process out by topping and tailing our lemon, just cutting into the tip of each end. Then cut right down the middle vertically in half. And then we're going to go in half again, putting the flat side of the lemon down so that we have something sturdy to cut with. And then you can see kind of the pith membrane part. The first thing we're going to do is to hold it up vertically on a flat side and then slice right down the middle. That will reveal our seeds on the inside, which we want to remove because nobody wants to bite into a seed when they're eating oysters. And then this little membrane parts on the side here, we're going to slice them right off, which will make the lemon wedge beautiful, but also remove any obstruction to our fresh burst of lemony acid to anoint our oysters. All right, let's talk bubbles. This is a Cremant d'Alsace from Lucien Albrecht. It is from the Alsace region of France, and a Cremant is made in the Méthode Champenoise. The Champagne method gives you incredible value in terms of price point, but does not at all skip on the quality. This one is exceptional. The characteristics of this particular Cremant d'Alsace: it has beautiful red fruit flavors, which will complement some of the sweetness in some of our oysters, crisp acidity, which will cut through the intrinsic richness in our oysters, and a lovely creamy accent that will allow it to stand up to our oysters. And now on to opening up our beautiful bottle of bubbly. We start out by using our wine key or any serrated knife that you have around and carefully cutting around that seal. There's usually a tab that you can actually pull on to help you remove the top foil seal from the champagne bottle. While we're twisting the metal on the cage element around the cork, we want to have our hand securely over the cork just in case the pressure gives way. We don't want any early pops. And once you remove the cage, go ahead and give the cork a firm twist while holding the bottom end of the bottle with the other hand. And with a firm grip, simply begin twisting the cork and wiggling your way up until it pops and releases all that pressure. Then you're ready to pour. Pouring champagne and sparkling beverages, you want to angle the glass at approximately a 45-degree angle and do what's called priming. That means just pouring a small amount in, allowing the effervescence to dissolve, and then continuing to fill the glass as you prefer. Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, Pursuit of Passion. Thank you once again. Please be well on your pursuit of passion and have a happy Valentine's Day. Switch.
Ah, crap. In the
He's
process.
He's shucking right now. Jamie, he's shucking.
Just be careful.
Jamie, you're supposed to be wearing gloves. You know that those guys wear gloves, Jamie.
Yup.
Are you wearing gloves?
I don't need gloves.
This is doing it at home, right? I don't think you need gloves.
Yes, you do. That thing is slippery. You don't want shucking it at all.
I'm not much of a shucker.